You are a planeswalker. You travel to every inch of the multiverse, visiting planes and enjoying their beauty. You battle demons wielding dark magic and giant spaghetti monsters from the sky. But your latest adventure is taking you to a new world. A world based in digital dueling. A world where you face the twin boss of Mono Red trying to kill you in 4 turns. Or Esper Control guaranteed to cast Thought Erasure on turn 2. Join us on this journey as one man, and occasionally his wife, try to climb the ladder and reach the glorious heights of Mythic. But only in Constructed, as we're not very good at Draft. Cue the dramatic intro.
We're playing a combo deck that centers around Bolas's Citadel, where we want to try and sacrifice 10 permanents to make our opponent lose 10 life and then repeat this process so we win. Wildgrowth Walker offers us a chance to regain all the life we are spending casting spells on the top of our deck, and we support this with explore creatures such as Merfolk Branchwalker and Jadelight Ranger. We then include Path of Discovery so that any creature entering the battlefield will explore and further support our life gain. Wayward Swordtooth allows us to play additional lands from the top of our deck, as well as to gain some early ramp so we can cast Bolas's Citadel on curve. Doom Whisperer entitles us to surveil extra cards away that we don't want from the top of our deck if they're dead draws, and a Boreal Grazer acts as a fantastic ramp spell on turn 1, as well as a very good blocker against red aggro decks with additional reach capabilities to stop any Thief of Sanity shenanigans. We finish the deck off with Bond of Flourishing to gain life and put a permanent into our hand, Gaia's Blessing so we don't mill ourselves by shuffling our graveyard back into our library, and Assassin's Trophy to get rid of any troublesome permanents that are interrupting our combo. Our sideboard contains Duresses for the control game, Cast Downs, Thrashing Brontodons and Crawl Harpooners for mid-range, Blast Zones for white weenie decks. However, we're playing just best of 1, so we're not really bothering with the sideboard today. We start today in Platinum 3 and we're going to try and see how far this Bolas's Citadel combo deck is going to take us. Here's the gameplay. We keep a decent opening hand. It has both colours of mana and allows Merfolk Branchwalker to find us land number 3 should we get there. Our opponent starts with a swamp, passes the turn, we draw land number 3 and lead off with a forest. Our opponent plays a Guild Globe on turn 2, drawing them a card when it enters the battlefield. We draw a Bond of Flourishing, play land number 2 and lead with a Wildgrowth Walker. Black often has unconditional removal, so we're not susceptible to burn spells like we would if we were playing against Mono Red. Chromatic Lantern from our opponent tells us we're playing the Chromatic Black deck, which means we could see any threats in any colours at any point in time. Our Merfolk Branchwalker finds a second Branchwalker, we gain 3 life and we attack for 2. Our opponent casts Ritual of Soot, destroying our board, but leaving us in pretty good place as we have land and spells to play. We play the Branchwalker hoping to explore into our next land in order to get enough to play Bolas's Citadel. We see a Wayward Swordtooth on the top and we put it in the graveyard. We Assassin's Trophy their Chromatic Lantern, rendering their coloured spells unplayable. They Moment of Craving our Branchwalker and they clear our board. They cast Karn and Tickle. We give them a swamp, exiling their removal spell. They play the land into Treasure Map and pass the turn there. We draw land number 5 and cast Wayward Swordtooth. We Bond of Flourish, trying to find land number 6 so we can play Bolas's Citadel on our next turn. They cast Ugin and tick down, destroying our Swordtooth. They then cast a Guild Globe and a Treasure Map for free, thanks to Ugin's static ability making all colourless spells 2 cheaper. They tick down a Karn and they create a 5/5 construct and they pass the turn. We cast Bolas's Citadel. We play the land that's on top of the deck, and then we cast a Jadelight Ranger and explore a Gaia's Blessing into the graveyard. This shuffles our graveyard back into our library, giving us access to all our previous spells. We play Path of Discovery as a combo staple and Bond of Flourish for a net life gain of 1. This finds us a Doom Whisperer which we put into our hand for the next turn in order to keep our combo alive. We're thrilled to see a Wildgrowth Walker on the top of our deck as he will explore on entry thanks to Path of Discovery, paying for himself. We're now in a position where we want to play as many spells as possible. With a combination of Wildgrowth Walker and the Path of Discovery in play, any creature that enters the battlefield will explore and gain us life and put excess lands into our hands so we don't draw them from the top of our deck. Ideally, we are looking for 10 permanents outside of our combo pieces, which we can sacrifice to Bolas' Citadel and make our opponent lose 10 life. We then want to loop this combo back around so we can trigger Bolas' Citadel a second time and take our opponent to 0. As our opponent is completely tapped down, we can afford to be choosy because there is no fear of interruption on their part. With one land too many on the top of our deck, the combo stops with a memorial to follow that we can't play, and the turn passes to our very patient opponent. They tick up Ugin to make a 2-2 whilst we cross our fingers that they don't have another board wipe. They have one card in hand and they concede the game.
Victory!
Game number 2, we mulligan a 1-land hand and a lot of big spells. We keep a 6 with 2 lands in both colours and some explore to try and hit land number 3. We scry Bolas' Citadel to the bottom and we play a Swan. Our opponent plays a tap Watery Grave, so we're smelling a Thought Erasure coming on turn 2. We cast Wildgrowth Walker so our opponent can't force us to discard it using Thought Erasure. Our opponent plays a Search for Azcanta and passes the turn. We play a Merfolk Branch Walker, which triggers our Wildgrowth Walker, gaining us 3 life and adding a +1/+1 counter to it. We find a land for turn and we attack for 2. Our opponent plays a land and passes the turn. This is representing a possible Absorb, Sinister Sabotage or a Mortify. We play a second Branch Walker and in response our opponent mortifies our Wildgrowth Walker. We Graveyard a Grazer from the Explore trigger, we attack for 2 and pass the turn. Our opponent plays a tap land so we're not going to get board wiped this turn. We miss a land drop so we Bond of Flourish looking for our 4th land. We attack for 5 and then play Gaia's Blessed in order to draw a card and shuffle other cards back into our library. Our opponent plays a Swamp and then spends 3 mana to cast Baby Teferi. He bounces a Merfolk's Branch Walker, which is not a terrible thing for us because we get a re-explore trigger when it enters the battlefield again. We draw land number 5. We attack Teferi and get him off the board. Our opponent is representing a counterspell and possibly a Dovin's Veto, so we try to draw it out by casting Path of Discovery. This resolves, so now our Boreal Grazers can explore and look for our 6th land. We cast a Grazer looking for a land to put into play, we find another Grazer on top of our library and put it in our graveyard. On our opponent's turn they play a Liliana and they make us sacrifice 2 creatures clearing our board. On our turn we draw a Bolas' Citadel but we're 1 land too short. We cast Wayward Swordtooth to explore and give us a presence on the board. We put another Swordtooth into the graveyard and then we cast Merfolk Branch Walker to try and explore twice to find a land. Our opponent casts D-Spark to exile our Path of Discovery. They make a zombie token with Liliana and they leave up 4 mana for a suspected Chemist's Insight at the end of turn. We draw the land we're looking for and we force their hand by casting Bolas' Citadel. They respond by casting Chemist's Insight and leaving themselves only 1 mana open. This gives us a great opportunity to try and combo out and win the game. We spend the next few moments casting spells from the top of our deck. Ideally, we are looking for a Wildgrowth Walker in order to regain the life we're using to cast the spells. As we're playing against control, we can afford to go quite low with our life total as we are at no risk from any kind of burn spells so we can inadvertently lose the game. We use Doom Whisperer a number of times to surveil cards from the top of our deck into our graveyard looking for the Wildgrowth Walker. We don't find one, but we do have enough permanents in play in order to get the City's Blessing. This allows our Wayward Swordtooth to attack so we can try and kill Liliana. Our opponent plays a second Baby Teferi and we are fully expecting them to bounce our Bolas' Citadel back to our hand. Instead, they choose to bounce the Doom Whisperer back to our hand. For our turn, we draw a Path of Discovery. Unbeknownst to our opponent, we have an Assassin's Trophy on top of our deck. We cast the Path of Discovery, which resolves. We then try to regain life by casting Wildgrowth Walker, which in theory would explore when it enters the battlefield. Our opponent counters this using Absorb. With only 1 mana up, we are now in a position where we can use our Assassin's Trophy to kill their zombie token, removing their only blocker. The creatures we have on board represent lethal and our opponent concedes.
Victory!
Game number 3 and we mulligan a 1 land hand. We keep a risky 6 as it only has 1 land, but we are on the draw and most of our hand is 2 CMC or less. Equally, if we can scry a land to the top, it means we can play 2 lands turn 1 thanks to the Arboreal Grazer. We scry into a woodland cemetery. Never didn't have it. This gives us the all-important second land and gives us the black mana that we also need to cast Bolas's Citadel. Our opponent starts with an island and they leave up 1 mana, so this suggests an opt at the end of their turn. We cast a Grazer and our opponent opts in response. The Grazer puts a woodland cemetery into the battlefield tapped and we pass the turn. Our opponent plays a mountain and swiftly passes back. We cast Gaia's Blessing to try and draw a card in the hopes of finding land number 3, but instead we find a 6 mana card. Great. With no great attacks on board, we pass the turn. Our opponent plays a second mountain and passes back. We're still not quite sure what kind of deck it is we're playing against, so we're being slightly cautious. We're thrilled to see land number 3, so we put it in straight away to try and hit Wayward Swordtooth and give ourselves a presence, ending our turn. Our opponent then casts double cast followed by a lightning strike. This will effectively deal 6 damage to our Swordtooth, so no extra lands for us for the time being. We draw another Swordtooth however, but cast Gaia's Blessing in the hopes of finding land number 4. Instead we find an Assassin's Trophy and have to leave our turn there. Our opponent plays nothing and the turn is ours again. Hallelujah! We draw land. With our life total under no immediate threat, we take the turn to cast Path of Discovery to try and set up our combo. This also allows our Swordtooth and Grazer in hand to help us try and find land 5 and 6 for our next turn. Our opponent Chemist's Insights at the end of turn and draws 2 cards. Our opponent then casts their first permanent in Saheeli, it's that deck, but has no targets for a tick down ability. We cast Wayward Swordtooth, who explores on entry thanks to Path of Discovery. We graveyard a Jadelight Ranger as really we're just looking for land and nothing else. We try again with an Arboreal Grazer and order the triggers to explore first so we can get the ramp value if a land is hit. We find a Wildgrowth Walker but decide to leave that on top as it is a key piece of our combo. Our opponent casts double cast again, triggering Saheeli's static ability to make a 1/1 servo. They do the same trick as earlier and cast Lightning Strike to deal 6 damage to our Swordtooth as well as make a second servo. We cast the Wildgrowth Walker who explores on entry and gives ourselves some life back and we find a land on top. We play the land and an Arboreal Grazer, again ordering our triggers as we did before. We graveyard a Branch Walker as we really need a third black source to play our win con. An Assassin's Trophy on Saheeli prevents any more servos and we attack for 1 to send a message. They cast a second Saheeli and pass, leaving Chemist's Insight mana open. Rona smiles on us and we draw a Woodland Cemetery. That's 3 black mana for Bolas's Citadel and we get ready to combo off with it on our board state. We look to the top of our deck and lo and behold, it's another land. As predicted, our opponent casts Chemist's Insight and gains a servo. They play a land for turn and they pass back. We draw the cop-blocking forest from before, only to find more land. However, we can play this overgrown tomb tapped and fill up like an actress at the Oscars at the sight of a Jadelight Ranger. Oh, the triggers. Joy is short-lived as our opponent responds with Electro Dominance targeting our much-needed Wildgrowth Walker and he gets another servo. The Jadelight Ranger puts a land in our hand and we keep a Wayward Swordtooth on top who explores in itself to find an Assassin's Trophy. In a big case of the Deja Vus, we cast Assassin's Trophy on Saheeli and he opts to pump out 1 more servo before her untimely death. We cast a second Swordtooth and he finds us a Wildgrowth Walker, which in turn explores a second Citadel away. We cast the Doom Whisperer, which now means we have our combo pieces all in place and we are locked to win the game. We start by casting as many non-land permanents as possible, each creature exploring in turn and gaining us life. We will then use these expendable permanents to sack to Bolas's Citadel, dealing 10 damage to our opponent, and then rinse and repeat. Our opponent sees that this combo is in place and they have not much interaction, so they chose not to live through it and valiantly concedes.
Victory.
We play a couple more games on the ladder, which includes a loss to a mono blue tempo deck which steamrolls us through the use of a departed deckhand and a Merfolk Trickster. And after a very tedious game playing against a historic deck with all the super friends you can think of, we get the win by locking up our combo and going to town and drawing our deck. By the end of the evening we are finishing 2 spaces off Platinum 2, so not bad for a 5-game run. Overall this deck is super fun to play and it has a great game against both low to the ground aggro decks as well as control decks, because if you're able to combo off they cannot interact. The use of life gaining through the Wildgrowth Walker makes Bolas's Citadel a real card draw engine. My credit goes to Jeff Hoogland who came up with the original build of this deck and I'm having a great time playing it. If you've enjoyed this video, please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel and give us more videos in the future. You can follow us on all the socials by using the tag @MakingMythic. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you next time.